So be sure to check out the Slingshot website on the events page, and you can find all the details there with registration links. But for today, I'm happy to introduce everyone to Jim Lee, who's also known as Cake around here. So Jim's going to be taking us through today of how Slate was built. So Jim, if you're all set, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Jason. It's an honor to be introduced by you. Hey, everyone. I'm Cake, and I've been working on a project called Slate with Protocol Labs with pretty much some of the best people I know. And so without further ado, let's get started. Teamwork makes the dreams work. So a lot of what is possible today, what you see when you visit slate.host, is possible because Horace really killed it on design. Martina has been killing engineering, and Jason built like some of the coolest examples, and like I think the Chrome extension is probably one of the coolest things that we offer outside the product. And William and Tara have created the marketing page that you see here. And so just want to remind everyone that I guess it takes a team to build really cool things. We've been lucky to have contributions from pretty much all around the world. So, and we're getting more contributors. So if you're interested in contributing and helping out with Slate, you're more than welcome. And I'm always around if you have any questions. Textile, as I'll get into later in this presentation, has been, instrumental in making all this possible. Pooja Shah and Juan Bonet really set the groundwork for any of this to kind of sit in my head and kind of give me the ability to kind of come up with the foundation for the work of Slate, which I'll get into as well. And it's been an insane privilege. Lucky to have anyone's attention, dedicated time, extremely grateful for all of it. And so Slate is completely open source, and you can ask me if you need anything. We have a GitHub issues tab. If you file an issue, I will be there. I will help you with getting buckets working. I'll help you get PowerGate working. My time is your time, so whatever you guys need. Today is a really special day because it marks 7 months of searching for the optimal client experience for Filecoin. And so we get a lot that Slate is an IPFS client too. We get a lot that Slate can do other things, but we're really looking for that optimal Filecoin experience. And I'll take you back to March 1st, before Slate even existed, before we even called it Slate. And it was called the Filecoin client. I'll take you to the transition point in June when the Filecoin client became sort of Slate and we rebranded. And there's other moments such as when we were only using PowerGate. The first day we supported PDFs and videos, which started showing our range as a product, not just for visuals. And also September 14th is a special day for me because Martina Long basically saved the day and made a lot of the engineering work, just really killed it. And so I think the first step for anyone who really wants to build for Filecoin is kind of understanding the romantic vision behind Filecoin. I think in engineering, it's really easy to become a fatalist and think about things in kind of a deterministic way. So what is the fundamental truth about the function calls, and what are the preconditions and postconditions? And understandably, Filecoin, will run into performance issues, will run into bugs and snags, but the romantic vision is really, really wonderful. So I got lucky. In the February 2020, I was able to work on the documentation project for Lotus, and I had a ton of help from their team. So it had a pretty unfair advantage. I could talk to Magic, who's basically one of the smartest people I've ever had the chance of meeting. And, I actually completed a small storage and retrieval deal using Lotus at the time. And I got a taste of the Filecoin stack. And that's when I became a true believer. I think I actually thought that this thing could really work and be amazing. And we just have to make it available to everyone. And why put together this team that just, I think, always was willing to share information openly. Travis Person, whenever you ask him a question, he'll always share what he knows. And it's just really easy to kind of understand. So I started to read a lot of the materials, and they're really, really dense. There are a lot of wonderful technologies that are being built to get Filecoin to work. And so I had a lot of assistance, and the Filecoin spec they updated the image, or the web page. So right now you see this is a newer one, but the older one was super informative and kind of captured a lot of the original vision for Filecoin. And so I naively, I have some design experience. So I naively approached the documentation project, with my typical individual contributor style. So, got to produce a hasty vision. So determine themes, determine insights, determine where you gamble, where are the opportunities beyond existing solutions, and to be brave, right? Because you know that you could be wrong, but you got to give it your best shot. And so I prototyped, I mood boarded, pull up 155 samples of different documentation websites, and then iterating quickly to like test a vision, test a solution. And in retrospect, designing documentation was fairly simple compared to the Filecoin client, which was significantly harder. So, if you look right here, like, and you just look at a command line tool, you just see all these programs that are like, or, groups, the taxonomy of methods that are like things you have to understand what they do. And it wasn't until like last month where I was able to produce something like this even. So this is like actually a new thing where this is 49 of the 100 or so methods that you can do operations on top of the Lotus network and the data that it produces. And so it's just incredibly complicated and there's a lot of things. And so it's not as simple as like when I'm designing for like a normal website where the constraints are really confined. It's like there's a lot of stuff that you have to kind of keep into context before you produce any forms. And Pooja, I gotta give a huge shout out to Pooja. Pooja was the first person that really gave me a huge lift and helped me realize the detail and complexity required to solve this problem. So we were in a mode where she has a really deep understanding of Filecoin. So we were able to kind of like, with her help, before I got into like mocks or prototypes, really just draft out all the features and flows. And this made a ton of work possible. There are ideas from IPFS companion and client and other apps in the ecosystem that I wasn't even aware of. So seeing this was extremely enlightening. And I was unprepared for topics like data transfer and payment channels from, previously before working on the Filecoin client, I was working in games and, we make up rules. We just have fun. So there's a lot of things that, I needed a really good primer on. And Juan and Pooja, we worked in a Figma file. I'm happy to share that Figma file with people later if they like, but it was just a lot of ideation and it was really fun. Like I could see basically in the ideation that we came up together, I actually saw that like almost the entire history of computing. And it's kind of fun like to trace things back to like the 90s, 2000 and how software has evolved. And it kind of, the weight started to set in. I started to realize, oh my goodness, like this is kind of a homage to software that we've used all our lives, and maybe we can do something really cool here. And so I went and did what I do best. I don't know if it's the best design process, whatever, but I went and produced like a ton of mood boards. So put like 346 references that the Protocol Labs team liked. I would share some of the stuff I posted in Slack too, but that's, like a lot of it's just a continuation of the same thing. So I really wanted to get a sense of how people felt when they looked at visuals. I wanted to be there to talk to them and kind of get a feel for like, oh, what do you like? And what do you like about these things? And, intrigue is an important part of when you're designing an application. And the Filecoin network, when it hits the mainstream, won't be any different than any type of other tool that we've used in the history of human civilization. It has to be interesting, has to be intriguing, and has to feel like it gives you superpowers. So aesthetic matters, visual representation matters. And so that led to a Figma design party all March. And this is all I'm really comfortable with showing from that Figma party. I made a ton of things. I crossed out a ton of things. And then countless prototypes through April written in React so people could interact with the flows. So it was super important for me that you could actually use an experience. There was no backend. You could just basically go through every single view that was in the Filecoin client and get a feel for if the data was there, if you could actually make storage and retrieval deals, what would it feel like? And so I love going to museums and looking at art. So I kind of, selfishly put that story into the Filecoin client and, made it so everyone could see this full vision. And I think there was about like 20 or 30 or so scenes that you could experience going through the Filecoin client. And I was actually pretty excited about this path. I thought, this would be really cool as a desktop client. We were obviously planning to build it as an Electron app. And I built it starting with this this GitHub repo. So this GitHub repo is basically the starting point for a lot of my projects. I just use like a few libraries, and Next.js is probably my favorite framework for the web. There's a lot of other great tools for sure, but this one, it's starting from just like one single page and getting to all those. And by May 4th, after all that kind of heads down design iteration and help from Juan and Pooja, I was able to kind of get a tweet out there finally and say, hey, here's what I've been working on, and hope you guys like it. Like a first stab, a first genuine stab at the Filecoin network. One second. And so, yeah, that turned out to be received pretty well. I have to give a huge shout out to Render. Render is one of my favorite services for hosting. Their backend is GCP and Kubernetes, so it's pretty powerful stuff, and worked really well to just show the whole world this Filecoin client example. And some ideas I also took. I think we stand on the shoulders of giants. My peer Ben gave me the idea for pre-brand. I remember seeing his presentation a long time ago and being like, yeah, that's really smart, like a brand that's adaptable and can change over time. And so I use sites like Logo Archive with the team to kind of come up with what our V1, what people like generally. And so I was asking people, hey, like we're naming the Filecoin client, and I had this page, and this page had a place where you could vote, or you couldn't vote on the page, you had to DM me your vote, but I keep track of everything. And here I'm going to hide the person who said it, but we had a lot of comments of people liking the name Slate, and I was kind of like, oh, Slate's like a cool name, and I hadn't really before in the past had a group kind of come together and name a product together. Like usually that's like one person decides because it's like an endless debate, but I felt like, let's ask everyone. So we pulled everyone together, and it was cool that a lot of people kind of gravitated around the same name. And I was like, okay, well, that's cool. So we actually, I put that on the back burner. Naming the Filecoin client wasn't as important as getting this relationship right. So Textile is the ecosystem, the platform, the tooling that really makes this all possible. And it's a joy to work with Textile. Like they really care, they're really responsive. And you can see that even at like high duress moments when there's just like a ton of stuff coming their way. A huge joy to work with them. And so by June, after doing all that design work that you see, or you had saw in the previous slides, the plan was eventually use Textile services. And at the time we were still the Filecoin client. So here's an internal doc I wrote about like my, timeline. I actually missed the launch date that if we were just gonna be a PowerGate client, I missed that launch date by like a month, but we actually expanded the product, and I'll get into that, more of those details soon. And so you can see here, very simple model. Textile's PowerGate is such a useful tool. All you need is a token. You gotta protect that token from bad actors for your user. And so you might want a way to manage that. Or if you're just a desktop app or offline app, it doesn't really, if you don't connect to the internet or you don't share that information out on the internet, it's okay. So I just came up with a simple model based on all the design work I had done. So just, we have a token, we have offline storage, we have a directory. That token can be used to, make deals, interact with the Filecoin file system, your wallet, help you find peers. And I have to admit, this model was actually fairly naive of me. It's a lot more, I didn't understand fully the full IPFS ecosystem at the time. I was just kind of hyper-focused on PowerGate. And so, my brain started going into like galaxy brain mode. It's like, okay, well, this is how it's going to work at a multiple client level. So you have client A, client B, they do roughly the same thing. They're different users. They all communicate with PowerGate. They're all going to send Filecoin between each other. There's going to be a deal registry whenever you make a storage deal. You can, pull retrieval deal from there. And to kind of like understand that the best way I know how to, I created a design system around it. And so this was actually the opportunity that began, I think, like external contributions to the project, because what I was able to do here was kind of like get, other people to work on small bits. So like, you don't have to be a blockchain expert to help me come up with a really great button or icons or colors. And so I really wanted to make it accessible for everyone. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start introducing some new concepts like Powergate. What are some things that I can get the community involved in that aren't as intimidating? And so it was really great to kind of start this out. And so the framework for design system, like what we wanted to teach, was something as simple as this. You have a user, they have a token, how they make a deal, how to interact with the Filecoin file system, how to interact with their wallet. We didn't want to get any crazier than that. Whatever architecture people are using, it's fine if they use those things. We just wanted to present this in a really simple way. And so if you guys remember from, I think this was a long time ago now, I did a HackFS session before Textile supported tons of teams during HackFS. I produced like a quick tutorial of how you could build an app using this design system and use Powergate and make a Filecoin storage deal. And so here's an example of that. Like, you basically have these components written in React. They're styled cross-browser. The tool Emotion's a tool that has auto prefixing. So gave me that confidence that, okay, like we can use this on any browser. And then the React code. So showing that in under 23 lines, hey, like we can get a token, and this is not safe. Don't do it this way, where you do it in the client. If you're like on, you generally want to have a server that manages secrets, but for demonstration purposes, the easiest way to get a token, use the Filecoin file system to create a new address, console log the response, and then to have a lot of the UI bindings that are intimidating to certain engineers kind of figured out. And this is when, like, shout out to one of my mentees, Daniel, who basically just kind of like went in and started having a ton of fun. Like, he put an odometer on this token thing. It's still live on our design system if you look at it. And we started getting help from the community to like kind of help make this Powergate thing have a visual system. And you can see here all the code for all the components are roughly the same. They're just kind of, it starts to become repetitive enough where you're like, okay, I get it. I just gotta get this token, and I can get my Filecoin balances. I just gotta get this token, and then I can get my, all of the each balance, the address type. If I get the token and I call some of the options that Filecoin file system provides, I can, learn about my storage deals, my retrieval deals. And then, Martina stepped in and really helped with some of the more robust components. So like we had a conversation where I was like, maybe it'd be kind of cool if when you use a component, you actually learn more about the Filecoin network too. And so the settings component, she kind of just like killed. It was like, just did an amazing job where you kind of just, once you're using it, you're kind of like, okay, I get it. There's this notion of hot storage, cold storage. And of course, like definitions for the network change over time as we implement new things. But it was just really cool to see, members of our community kind of just like create informative components, even not just like, like a button, but like something that teaches you how to use the network. And so this was the kind of the mental model, the hope where we would get to, where it was just like, okay, a ton of people understand this paradigm. You got a user, you have a token, and now you got deals, the Filecoin file system, and wallet. And you can just imagine this at scale. And this is what we're trying to get at. We're trying to get to the scale of people who understand how to use the Filecoin network. There were some caveats here, of course. Like, I think, we're on NERPA DevNet, and, today, if you're in Slingshot right now, we're trying to work with the testnet, which is the live environment. And, one thing that in retrospect, looking back on it, I think, it was awesome that NERPA was so performant and it made everything feel so fast. But, it's kind of on me to like, I didn't get to testing against the testnet soon enough. So a lot of the exploration there, and with Powergate was awesome, but it was kind of in optimal situations. And so I kind of wish that I had more opportunity to kind of test in the testnet environment, and, people who are self-hosting their Powergates kind of, I think, had the ability to do that. And I think we could have learned a lot more sooner. So I definitely needed the help, and I needed a team. that I could work with. And we were getting contributors and part-time contributors, but I was starting to realize that, okay, building this entire thing, this Filecoin client on my own, I'm not like the sharpest person in the world. So it would be really awesome to have a group of people to work with. And, like my friend Rich says, teamwork makes the dreams work. And I believe this with all my heart. I think you do things with other people and, you learn from them. You learn where you're wrong too. You're not always right. And I thought it was a really awesome opportunity to build a diverse team from start. So, let's get a range of developer backgrounds or no backgrounds and start with a fresh slate and kind of see how, what kind of impact that would have on our product process. If we're not all just monocultured and we're all thinking about things in different ways. July 10th, it felt right to remove the Filecoin branding and become Slate. And so I talked about this a little bit earlier, after everyone had a chance to vote at Protocol Labs and 22 plus names. The second runner-up was Argo. So that could have been a fun, if you guys have been following Slate, it could have been fun to imagine what it would have been like if we were named Argo. And, during this time working with Textile, I think when you work with like a really engaged group, you start discovering things on the fringes of your offering. You start learning more about what your tool can do. And I'm sharing a really bad diagram I made because, we were just getting all this new information of like, oh, there's buckets, there's ThreadsDB. And I wanted to make use of all those tools, and I'm still learning kind of, I was still wrapping my head around PowerGate, but I also had, this buckets tool that just seemed really interesting. And when Andrew proposed it, I was like, okay, we got to try this. It's like, this is a really cool piece of technology. And this, I think July 19th is when Slate was no longer a pure Filecoin client, and it wasn't fair to call it a Filecoin client anymore. Of course, officially branding something is another discussion all in itself. But we started to have some function in this code base as we were evolving and growing it that it seemed to make sense to start moving to a different brand. And I was looking through textile diagrams, and Pooja and Andrew have presented about this a ton of times before, and this tech is super solid. I mean, like they say it's beta stack or alpha stack or whatever, but in my experience, it's been very, very fun to work with. And I think it's beyond hobbyist stage where, you can kind of, once you have a stable enough infrastructure to run this code, it actually works really well. And it's only on the fringe cases where you're like testing the bounds that you kind of experience some issues, but it's a ton of fun to work with. So they really broke out, there's a white paper as well. I can share it with people later if they're interested, but they really broke out how their tooling works, and you kind of see all the considerations they're putting into things. And so buckets was this dynamic directory storage. And so you have PowerGate that's probably really great at storing single CIDs, but then you have with buckets, conceptually, it would be possible maybe to get a Unity game onto the Filecoin network, like a whole folders once you have the root CID for that directory. And so it made total sense for us to use it. And this was my first modeling of that. And I tried my best here. I'm actually I don't know if I got it right. But you have a local React application, which is what we have been working on for months, on what I've been working on for a while as well. And you have your identity, your libp2p token, and your libp2p token is basically your gateway into all of the hub. And something cool about a token like this, it could be gateway to other things as well. So if you leave our product, you can use this libp2p token to kind of go anywhere. And so we have a storage reference on Slate, so we don't have to always go to the bucket to get the information about what's on there. If we keep a storage reference, we can have a little bit, it's like acting as a cache. And then we can use the gateways to pull. So, we're not making total round trips when it comes to checking if something's in a bucket and then pulling. We can just hit up the gateway URL and get the asset. And, this directory aspect has always been something that I've really wanted in Slate. Because I think software is better with friends, when you can just kind of hang out with other people. And so I refined it over time. And I think Slate is now kind of like this, where you have a visit a web page or you open a program. The open program flow doesn't really work right now, but you have a library of CID references. You have your slates, which is our user experience. And slates, I'll get into more later, but slates are important because when you're working with data, it has to be enjoyable. It's not just like visually enjoyable. You gotta want to feel like you're collecting things and having fun. And that gets you into the cycle where you're constantly using the software. And that's when we can really get people to understand Filecoin, right? Because then Filecoin's always in a peripheral. And it's always like, oh, I can do things with this, maybe this retrieval thing and the storage thing. But until then, you have to keep people in this really happy cycle. Bring your friends there where you're sharing data between each other also kind of keeps people engaged. Planning SDK integrations. So, allowing people to bring in their software into the experience too could be really cool. And then we have like the 3 boxes for API and key management. So, to make Slate a really easy way to manage all your keys that hit up all these other services, the hub being our main one, right? So hubs have buckets, wallet, deal status. And, today what's really cool is you can have like an archive, which is an automated deal with the Filecoin network, or you can make a one-off storage deal and just store anything on the Filecoin network. And you can retrieve it back, and maybe there's a registry that we work on. And so this is kind of where we ended up. And looking at this, you can imagine a whole bunch of people using their own Slate clients, all connected to hubs, and then everything's intersecting with the Filecoin network. And so then, if we have a registry of all the deals that were made, it's possible that people can pull things back. And, this is I think this is kind of groundbreaking. Like, this allows people to kind of share openly in the whole world on this open network, where anyone can make a deal as long as the miner accepts it. And the hub is so cool. It helps you find, based on like a theoretical reputation index of the best miners to make deals with. And so, you have some more guarantees. And so it just seemed like all the pieces were coming together here. And using the technology at a programmatic level, I think people, there's a baseline for like development, especially even with, systems languages like Go or Rust or C++, or C, or Haskell or Erlang or whatever. But, when you're working with JavaScript, there's still some complexity. You have to understand the library. But I really like how they made their API just super simple. Like, you authenticate, you pass through the secrets that you have for textiles, only 2, and then you can basically do operations with buckets and then get a list of them, and you're already there. So with like 3 lines of code or 4 lines of code, you're able to kind of use the buckets API. I think that should be celebrated more. Like, I think they made something that is actually fundamentally really, really complicated. If you looked at previous diagrams, and just a few like library methods. And here I can break into one of the methods that I've kind of made more robust. And so, at times, you'll have to do some, you have to write some guard code, some try catches, but it still ends up being fairly simple. And so, I think what's really cool about this technology is that once people see the code and implementation, and so on GitHub, all of this is available. You can just go in there and see how we use Slate, and you can use Slate and then see the code behind it. I think it just makes it really easy for people to understand and get started. And so to handle all this complexity, Slate formed a core team. And so I keep close to my heart the first days that everyone contributed code to Slate. And so Jason, someone I met at the start of this journey, committed his first code June 23rd, 2020. I remember when he wrote his first tutorial as well. And it's just so cool to see people who don't have like a ton of this blockchain experience come in and like write tutorials even. I think it's just like, it shows that what we're working on actually has the ability to relate to everyone. Martina committed her first commit on June 28th and honestly started killing it from that point on. Tara and Will, Tara committed her first design system contribution on June 28th, Will July 1st, and Horace, my battle buddy on Slate, finally joined July 28th to kind of like really help us move everything forward. And Narrative did amazing brand work. And so I could show a ton of slides everywhere, but it's kind of everywhere. Like the logo mark is really beautiful. And I never had a chance to, like in this whole process, get a chance to have another team I trusted so much to help with design in the way that they did in a long time. Usually I'm kind of on the hook for a lot of things. And so, in prior work, and so here, Protocol Labs made it possible to work with Slate and work with Narrative. And yeah, huge thank you to Tom, Mac, and Tiago. August 1st, 2020, I put all the PDFs and videos on Slate. That was really cool. I think it started showing that Slate was a little bit more multidimensional. It wasn't just for like pretty pictures or whatever. We can store everything. And I think since then we've been expanding daily. The code is really simple. Like you just go in and you look at this React component and you can see like, oh, we're just checking the type and we're rendering the right HTML5 component to it, right? So, video, audio, image, object, these are all available. And I think like this is the genesis for expanding on this even further. Like, what if we combined them together? What if we did other things? And I think in a later class someday, Horace will probably cover some of the future vision we have for Slate, because this is so naive at this point, but we could go so much further. August 17, 2020, I did a class on the developer API for Slate. This was kind of a fun class because at the time, Slate's API was a little bit buggy. So I had a CORS issue, which prevented anyone from actually following the tutorial at the time of the presentation. But there's a lot of really cool highlights as well. And one thing to highlight is, at this point, the Slate team felt like just the coolest group of people to work with. So we had just contributors from everywhere. And this is the developer API screen as it stands today. And we're seeing on Twitter, shout out to Adrian, but they're using Slate now to take all their data from products like Instagram and use it as a backend replacement. And I think that's awesome. And so we provide like this really simple developer API, that lets you do this, and watching people do that is really cool. And so the code is really simple. You just have your authorization key header in your fetch request, and fetch is a common library amongst JavaScript developers. And if you have any confusion, I can always walk you through it later. But you're a user and you make a Slate API request and it ends up in a bucket. Simple as that. And I think like when we were able to provide this experience, and if you saw in the other diagram, the bucket is the gateway to Filecoin, right? So you have all your data in maybe a directory or a single file, and then you're ready to take that root CID and make a deal with the Filecoin network. It unlocks a ton of possibilities for engaging with Filecoin. So getting this flow and having seen people use it, I feel like we got people through the first step, and now we can get them to other steps. And so August 23rd, this is a special day for me. I love Monet. I think his art's legendary. Not much else to be said there. And it was awesome to kind of take some of the Commons work and put it onto Slate and just be like, hey, so I have a Slate and you can see the preview of everything. And, it's on a data bucket, but check this out. So let's say you're two different cases. You're a person who wants to preview a Filecoin deal, or you're just a person who wants to use Slate. Regardless, now you're using the Filecoin network. So if automatic Filecoin archiving for your account, if you want the data set to be open, let's say you collected all the art from museums that were willing to share it at high resolution. Now, every week or so, we're putting on the Filecoin network, or people can retrieve and keep local if they want, or help, support in some way. And so once that user relationship is happening, and people can bear witness, then we can start designing more experiences around that. So, and the code for that, hats off to Textile, it's super easy. It's just buckets.archive. We do some of the heavy lifting to get you that CID and organize the file in the data bucket, right? But then once the data is there, calling bucket.archive just works. And so that was kind of, really awesome to have during implementation time, because, we didn't have to deal with all of the what's running on my computer, how do I make sure that everything's well connected. It's just a simple API call. And I can't say this enough. I think having all of that stuff there, Jason has crazy perception. So he's able to see, okay, I see what's going on with the current Slate product, just kills it with this Chrome extension, blows all our minds. It's awesome as hell. And, it's open source, total game changer. And now you can right click on anything on the internet. And if you go back to the slide here, in your user, you make Slate API requests and you put it into a Textile bucket. From here, now we can get those into the Filecoin network so easily. So people don't realize it, but they're now helping grow the Filecoin network just by using the internet daily, just by collecting things that they like. And so I think that's just, that will help people understand the Filecoin network. Oh, I get things off of these like websites that their websites are open. The rules are like, you can use the images, but I get them off of this like Web2 website. And now I put them on this network where anyone globally can retrieve them, and it's open data for everyone in the world. And so with that work, Horace and Martina went to town. I think there are just countless design improvements and implementations that actually happen throughout the product. So you can just see, we have a directory, this directory thing I always wanted. And now we have these tiers. So we have people you can make requests to that be trusted. You can just subscribe. And so we add activity features. You can, follow people, and you can see what they're storing on the Filecoin network eventually. So then you can retrieve that back into your own account. And so I think that's going to be really fun. You have your data view, and I was kind of stubborn. I'm kind of sometimes one-dimensional as a designer. I think there's like one key solution, but my eyes opened when they killed it with like this multiple views. So you can view a grid, you can view a list, and you can see that we have diversity of files here. You have music, you have images. This page, I love it. Like, just be able to see the Slate previews. In the first version, you can only see you could see only the name of the Slate, which is kind of silly now, but like being able to see the previews made a huge difference. So it's easy to curate what you have. And, Tara and Will obviously killing it with the marketing page concepts. And so we wanted to make it known that when it came to, Slate, that a lot of people are involved. And so it was awesome to kind of have like them kind of dig into the community and work on slates and make marketing pages and trying to figure out the voice. And we're learning every day, and it's super impressive. I'm learning from them at this point. So it's really fun. And, kind of, we are being ambitious too. So I think we're trying to offer more free storage. Really cool. I mean, like, what I'm learning a lot from people who are younger than me today is that they have cooler influences than I did. When we were doing web apps in like 2010, the space was very young. I think like it was coming off of the .com crash, and there's a lot of cool websites, and it's like early Facebook days too. And I think now because of the vast array of data on the internet, a lot of my mentees and people I work with who are younger have a ton of really insanely cool influences. So that includes Vannevar Bush, Douglas Engelbart. It's just, yeah, so I'm learning about the computing ecosystem while I work with Will and Tara. So that's awesome. And we had a product on launch. So after 4 days, we ended up with 700 users, 10 gigabytes of data stored, and I think this is cool because it's kind of like a crowded product hunt. So September 14th, I told you I'd explain this later on, but it became official Martina Long Day because we had zero downtime and the product looked great. And I think Martina is responsible for a lot of that work. So thank you again. And yeah, we brought in the Filecoin features. So in our settings, I think it's really important when you're designing a system like this to have, really clear settings about what's happening. So we let users opt out on the automatic archiving if they don't want to have their stuff automatically archived. We force encryption, so only you can retrieve your storage deals or give permission, and you can give permission through Slate too. So that would be cool. And that code, Textile services are so well typed. Like, you could just go into their documentation, you can really see how it all works and not have to ask them any questions. And so, we at Slate really wanted a way to make a one-off storage deal. And so we were able to kind of like be given documentation like this, and it became very clear how to use that. And so, instead of just automatic Filecoin archiving, anything you want is a storage deal through Slate too. And so all the stuff that we had built and working with Textile got to this point where it's just like, okay, now we can really configure things. We can really fine tune them. And I know right now in Slingshot, some miners are concerned that, they're not getting the deal flow that they want. And so now that we have this config that landed recently, we can start working on this, and we can start directing deals to specific miners if we want to. And, it's super crucial that we support this flow. And so Slate, I think that in this way, designing a product and building a product this way and allowing areas to be iterated on, allow us to be flexible and grow with this new ecosystem and the changes that occur with it. And you can see here, it's just in the middle where you see bugs.create, and you can see it's like some of my code is really scratchy. So it's not even like textile code's messy, it's my code. So, I can determine if I want to encrypt a deal. And this is how we actually, for that deal, just create a new bucket, turn encryption to true, grab the root CID, and we make a new bucket, grab that key, and then make an archiving deal. So it's simple as that. If you want me to explain more of this later on, I totally can. And here's our storage worker. So behind the scenes, because we don't hide anything here, the whole code base is open source. You can see the worker that's kind of going and looking at everyone's configuration, cloning the buckets and cloning them encrypted or open, and making the storage deal. And you can see that there's in progress archives here. And so when we know there's more successful deals, we'll have pages where you can see all the deals that are successful. And I think that's how we put meaningful data on the Filecoin network. I think you start from a user experience that compels people to put stuff that matters to them. I think you look at the union between two people and you see, okay, like person A and person B love this type of data sets and they're growing it together. And you start gathering all this wonderful content and meaningful stuff like music, visuals, diagrams, PDFs, just anything, right? And then boom, you just make a storage deal. You just make an archiving automation like setup, and it's on the Filecoin network. And so I hope to see you all in the future. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. And I hope this was useful for people to see how Slate works and how we made Slate. And I'm available for any questions. I didn't even look at the chat, so would love to know when Slate would be stable enough to be taken seriously by a business. Yeah, I think we are going to work really hard to try to test all the cases for our community. So the reason why we're open source, and it's not the only reason, but it's because we want to show everyone our mistakes and all the pitfalls that we experience along the way so that everyone can learn. And so Slingshot is about getting applications onto the Filecoin network. And there's no better way, in my opinion, than just throwing ourselves in there and trying our best to prove that this stuff works. And so, yeah, I think like stable enough to be taken seriously by a business, all services I use have bugs. We just hope to be up there with the services that have the least amount of bugs. Cool. If there are no other questions or, well, I didn't realize that like Carson, Andrew, and Aaron are all in here. Wow. Glad you guys got to tune in. Hey, Horace. I think I did a good time too. I was hoping to end at 9:45, but looks like I ended at 9:51. Thank you, Zachary. Yeah, I can answer any questions, or I'd love to get more into technical details. I know that I was supposed to get into a lot of deep technical stuff, but I can't help that. Slate is Slate. It appears to be simpler because Textile's API is just really clean. So I actually can't. I wish the deep technical side was actually more intimidating or like had a lot of methods I had to worry about, but to use Slate, it's actually thank you, Carson. I think like this is like a dream come true for me, is to have like such a passionate group of people who want to make a thing work and learn at the fringes together. You guys are really like, for a year that's been pretty crazy, you guys are probably like one of the best parts of this year for me. It's rare to have this kind of dedication to a vision. So I'd love to help out any Slingshot teams if I could as well to get. Oh, Carlos, you're hitting like a really, really special place for me. I really want to support 3D modeling software in Slate if I can. And so
if we look back at one of my older slides, talk about like the object preview, right? So you can view a PDF, you can view video. If we get modeling software into Slate and we start creating the SDK for all of that, so Slate becomes a viewer for so many things. Gosh, I think what I'm really excited about is in the future, either post Slingshot or later, like maybe later, Horace has been cooking this vision for, how you meet other people when you're researching certain things, and you see the file genome for. So one of my favorite products out there, Artsy, Carter Cleveland had this concept of the art genome, where you can trace the lineage of art throughout history and where it came from. And you go to museums, you kind of see this too. I think for us, we have this amazing opportunity to kind of like trace the lineage of files, right? So who uploads something first, and see how that evolved, and you can see what Slate ends up on. So you can see what taxonomy belongs to, and you can like get a better understanding of the cultural group that cares about these files. And games are such a big part of that. 3D models are such a big part of that. So it's just, the opportunities are just endless. And then I think, textiles infrastructure, we're only touching, like I'm only really working with PowerGate and buckets, but I could build real-time chat, using a lot of this too. So, to have that social side in Slate. So you're having, let's say you're just having such an engaging flow state on Slate, and then all of a sudden you don't even realize it, but you're working with the Filecoin network too. And then, through the Filecoin network, you're sharing your data openly with the world. And then you have the file genome where you can see the connections between files in the world with each other. And then you can, and one thing I didn't share about Slate is we have the API now, thanks to some help from Digital Mob, where we have the API for a block explorer too. So we can, start doing CID search on the Filecoin network. We can start doing block exploring. And so, we're kind of in a place where I think we can innovate in many directions. And so I love to hear from the community on like what they think is interesting. I'm kind of at my wit's end sometimes, because it's like, sometimes it's so galaxy brain for me. I'm like, wow, there could be a ton of stuff that happens here. What have we not explored because of the last, 10 years of tradition in the software industry? Let me check YouTube if there's any other questions. I'm cool. Well, it looks like I think we're good to wrap up. If there's no other questions or thank you, Carlos. It means a lot. I feel like this is really lucky to even be able to work on this. See you on the internet.